Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord. Happy New Year. I hope everyone enjoyed their holiday break. And for the folks working out there, I hope this is a break for you because I know it's a slow work week out there for everyone. A ton of news over the weekend. We're going to get into the Chris Sale Braves trade. We're going to get into Arthur Smith and whether he is going to be fired at the end of the season. Just 1 week left. And Falcons playoff hopes not dead yet. Even after the loss, not dead yet. But we're going to start with the college football playoff instant classics. We talked about it. I think they both were decided on the last play of the game. We're going to begin with Michigan and Alabama. What surprised you most about this game, and what are you happiest most about this game?
I'm happiest that Bama's not there. I grew up a UGA fan, went to LSU, so both of those schools absolutely despise Bama, and it's because of their success. There's no doubt about that. So it's nice to see, not Bama in the SEC or in the national championship. What I'm most surprised by is that Bama isn't in the national championship. You give Nick Saban a month to prepare for a game. You got to put your eggs in that basket, chances not. And the fact is they looked underprepared. Their game plan was stale. It didn't make sense whatsoever. Jalen Milroe dropping back to pass the entire first half was just absolutely mind-boggling. I don't know if it was a Saban thing, if it was a Tommy Rees thing, or I have no idea what it was, but Jalen Milroe hasn't been able to drop back and pass other than against LSU's pathetic defense this entire season. This looked like the Bama team week 2 against Texas. And if Michigan didn't shoot themselves in the foot constantly, J.J. McCarthy threw that interception on the first play that wasn't an interception. I was like, oh my gosh, this could be a bloodbath. And then they stopped Bama, and then Bama got the ball back on the punt, went down and scored with ease running the football. I thought to myself, I was like, this could be an absolute bloodbath. And it was anything but that. I mean, and I know it ended in overtime on 4th down inside the 5-yard line. But to me, that game shouldn't have even been close. I mean, Michigan shot themselves in the foot constantly. It's like they didn't want to win that game, and Bama just kept giving it back to them like, no, you take it.
I agree with you. I think the most shocking aspect was definitely the game plan. And I think it was mostly Tommy Rees. I mean, we've talked about Tommy Rees and how he's basically, he's been just, responsible for this huge offensive turnaround that we've seen from Alabama and Jalen Milroe. And it seemed like he was in his bag, especially against Georgia and stuff like that. And at moments you saw Alabama do what they did against Georgia, which was run the football. I mean, they controlled the line of scrimmage when they were running the football. When they passed the football, it was a totally different thing. Like Michigan dominated the line of scrimmage, had 5 sacks on Milroe. Milroe looked like he started seeing ghosts too. I mean, after those 5 sacks in the first half, he was not the same quarterback. And you can blame it on the snaps which were just unexplainably awful all season long. But a lot of it was Michigan's pressure that they were getting on him on almost every single play. And he stopped looking downfield. And even when he did have time, he wasn't able to deliver like we've seen time and time again because he was uncomfortable. And you could tell he was uncomfortable. And even on that last play, you could tell he was uncomfortable because it seemed like he just rushed into the line of scrimmage when if he had just taken a little bit of time, and I don't think they gave him an RPO. I think they gave him a straight power, which I hate that call. If they had slung that thing out to the back, I think they have a chance to reach the pylon, and we might still be watching that game. It might have never ended, and the Washington-Texas game would have gone to 4 a.m. I mean, that's a different story that we have to talk about. That's got to be fixed. We can't be having this game at 2 a.m. On like a Sunday night. But yeah, I was surprised by that. The thing that I'm most happy about is people can finally look at Jim Harbaugh for the coach that he is. And listen, you may not like him. I understand, very, very polarizing figure. But at the end of the day, the guy's won everywhere he's been. He was a guy that won 10 games at Stanford. You know how hard that is to do? He's a guy who's been to a Super Bowl, nearly won a Super Bowl. He's a guy who's turned around this Michigan program that for 20 years was just obsolete. I mean, I don't even like people talk about Michigan as this huge brand. We have grown up in Michigan sucking until these last 5 years, and Jim Harbaugh was the guy that turned that around, and now he finally gets over that hump, and now he's going to be a favorite to win his first national championship. So anybody who acted like, oh, and they do the same thing with Brian Kelly, like, oh, Brian Kelly can't win the big game. When he's going into these big games where it's like 5 and 6 and 7-star recruits, trust me, I know that's not a real thing, but you're so out-recruited across the board, you don't even have a chance. You can't out-coach that kind of talent discrepancy. And finally, you got a time where maybe even Michigan had the better talent. They obviously played terrible in terms of just some player dumb mistakes. But when push came to shove, they were the team that executed in the fourth quarter. That game looked like Alabama, as bad as they were going to play because of all the mistakes from Michigan. They were going to win that game until Jalen Milroe turned the ball over going down the field when it looked like they were about to score again and make it a 2-score game. So they were the team that executed. They were the team that didn't blink. They were the team that was better coached. Jim Harbaugh, without a doubt, outcoached Nick Saban and his staff. And credit to Michigan. They've been building towards this, and they finally got on an even playing field where they weren't up against, Georgia from the last 2 years where they could actually win the game.
Yeah, I even think you could boil it down to like effort and fire. Through the first few drives, it looked like Bama just wanted it more, and this was just going to be, like I said, another bloodbath. And then as the game progressed, it did feel like Michigan just started leaning on Bama, which is surprising because me and you and probably most of the country figured that it would be Bama leaning on Michigan throughout the fight. So, that's another surprising facet in all of this. And another thing in all of this, is I don't even think that Michigan, like I said, Michigan didn't play that well. Like I know it was a close game and it came down to the final play, and the dramatics were there, and there was great plays by both sides throughout the ball game. This was a sloppy game all around. Bama looked bad throughout the game, offensively through 2.5 quarters, and then defensively the second half of the game. Michigan constantly shot themselves in the foot. Compared to the other semifinal game, this one was ugly. Like, I kept watching it, and I was watching it alone, just talking to myself, having an adult beverage, and I kept just saying the word idiots. These guys were playing like idiots. That was a big surprise. You have a month off, and maybe that does have something to do with it. You have a month off, you're a little rusty, trying to get back in the swing of things. That was surprising. Both of these teams did not play their best ball.
No, they didn't, but that's what makes college football so great. You can get one of these sloppy games that was really ugly from start to finish, and it just comes out looking like an instant classic at the end because it was decided in overtime, which college football overtime, I think, does it the right way. It was at the Rose Bowl. The sun was setting. You get these theatrics, and yes, it was a sloppy game versus 20-year-olds that have had, like you said, a month off, and it looked like they had a month off. Like, there was definitely some rest, and it's shocking. I'm not shocked that there was slop from Jalen Milroe or maybe the center exchange and maybe a special teams there. I'm shocked more, as we just said at the beginning, from the game plan that you saw from Alabama and just not leaning on that rushing attack, because that was their bread and butter against Georgia, and that is exactly what was working against Michigan. And their running backs, I don't have it in front of me, but it didn't seem like they got 20 touches combined. And you're just like, what is going on here? And they just turned Milroe, as you said, into a drop back passer, and that's just not what he is, especially when there's so much pressure. It was shocking all the way around, and it was shocking.
What's crazy is the very first possession, Bama, the very first play, they got sacked. I think maybe on the third play, they got sacked as well. So first down and third down, Bama on their first drive, Jalen Milroe got sacked. They got the ball back after Michigan fumbled that punt. And then what did they do? They ran the ball and scored with ease and then immediately went away from that. I mean, this was one of the strangest game plans I've ever seen. And it all felt like it could be changed in an instant if somebody just called up to Tommy Rees. Saban obviously is the guy to do it. Like, hey, run the dang ball, I mean, blindside call from the stands, run the dang ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of Alabama fans in the stands. I know I had a few friends that were there that were probably screaming that exact thing, like, what are you doing? Run the dang ball. And they do that. Alabama's probably sitting here playing for a national championship. Coming up after the break, we're going to get into that other semifinal game. Washington is advancing to the national championship with a big win over the Texas Longhorns.